And Sarah, you had to cope with three cancer diagnoses. Your son's was it about 18 years ago?
Yeah, yeah.
And more recently, your own diagnosis of breast cancer and your husband's diagnosis too. Could you tell us about them then? Thank you.
Yeah, I feel as if as a person, I've been a little bit greedy. The statistic of they now say 1 in 2 of us will be impacted by cancer, and I've certainly had my fair share. And really, until the age of 21, I'd never had any contact with cancer at all. And indeed, after that, it was some 25 years later that came across Al's diagnosis. So when he was diagnosed with osteosarcoma in 2005, it's a primary bone cancer that he had, osteosarcoma. And at that time, it was a bit of a blow. He was a very fit young man, played rugby, cross country, very athletic. And he had the whole of his life ahead of him. He was 14 years old, and he's an identical twin to his brother Pat. So, you know, it was tough. At the time, we had a locum doctor, GP, who had come across this in a previous life when he was in South Africa. So he immediately sent us for an X-ray, which at that point wasn't usual. But very sadly, you know, because the X-ray was requested, we found out that Al had got his diagnosis, and we got a confirmed diagnosis. So that initial X-ray was done in early December, and we got a confirmed diagnosis on the 23rd of December, so just before Christmas. He had a very rare cancer, more commonly found in males and females, and usually the mass of people that are affected by this are age 13 to 21. So he fell right into that. He had 41 weeks of treatment. He had limb salvage surgery and intensive chemotherapy. So it was a 41 week protocol. But sadly, 2 years after his diagnosis, Al died. He put up a brave fight. As his mum, caring for a child with cancer is really hard. And, you know, watching a child go through the torture, and it is torture, of chemotherapy, is so painful. Children can take much higher toxicity than us as adults can. So they really do pump it into them. Having lost him, what I can say is that grieving as a parent is eternal. So I will grieve until the day that I die. So that was really sad, you know, but I feel it's impacted me, but I also like to think it's had a positive impact, and he would too. He'd be happy about that. Myself, well, slightly different. I just went for a routine mammogram and was absolutely knocked off my perch by a letter arriving a week later saying that I was required to go for further investigation and biopsies. And anybody who has been through that breast cancer investigation will know that it all moves very quickly. And within 2 weeks, I had a confirmed diagnosis of grade 1 invasive ductal carcinoma. Had a lumpectomy, had localized even radiotherapy, and completed all my treatment by the 7th of July last year. So it's just over the year.
Yeah.
And continuing with the ongoing treatment for lymphedema and taking the regular drugs for the next 5 years. So by comparison, feel I got off quite lightly compared to what Al had been through. And then my third occasion is Dave, my husband, and he'd had an initial grade 4 melanoma diagnosed 8 years ago. He had 3 surgeries, including removal of all his lymph nodes in that one particular area, and followed all the usual protocols at that time for 5 years. So, you know, that seemed to go quite well. He had since then, he's also had removal of a basal cell carcinoma and a squamous carcinoma. So he's had a couple of other things, but they were fairly, you know, insignificant, and treated, and he responded very well just to the removal with the surgery. But then last autumn, he found some lumps and bumps, went for investigation, and it was confirmed that he had grade 4C melanoma, and it was described as having jumped. So it had moved from the original site, gone across his chest, and he's currently having immunotherapy treatment, which, you know, is incredible with research that wasn't even available when he had his initial diagnosis 8 years ago. So incredible, really. 3 very different diagnoses.
Yeah, but really rather more than your fair share, I would say.
Yeah, I said greedy.
Yeah, what can I say?